Hello and welcome to this lecture that is going to focus on various risks that are faced along the supply chain. We are going to be able to identify each one of them and also be able to give examples that are going to bring the understanding of this particular lecture too. So our first kind of risk that we will focus on is what we call demand and supply risks. And this is simply risks that come about because of uncertainties in customer demand. And of course, when we have this kind of uncertainties, it can definitely disrupt the supply chain. It doesn't matter whether you are dealing with goods or also you may also be dealing with various services. I was interacting with a certain barber. Barber are the people or the person who does people's hair. So he was telling me that this particular day that we were with him, he has not seen a good flow of customers. What does that mean for him? Maybe his projected income of that particular day is going to reduce. So I was asking him what has contributed to people not coming for the hair to be taken care of, and he could not tell on the reason. So the same case when you are dealing with various goods, you would have differences in demand depending on the time, depending on what kind of goods that you are offering, and so on and so forth. So it calls upon us, as we understand the issues around supply chain, to be able to understand that these risks might be able to occur, and it is important that we know what to do when we are faced with these kind of risks. We have quite a number of examples. We have what we call seasonal demand fluctuations. We have goods that are consumed in a particular season. And when they are consumed in a particular season, once that season is over, then that signifies a decrease in demand of those particular goods. Take, for example, when we have a season where it is the cold season, very many people will, of course, be looking for warm clothes to be able to get over that particular season. But once that season is over, you will actually see some businessmen will now change to an alternative good because the season of the cold is no longer there. And we can give very many other examples related to seasons. Look at the place that you are in terms of location, in terms of country. Identify those goods that are seasonal, and that means they will be demanded at that particular moment. And once the moment is over, that's the end of the demand. So as a person in business, as a person in the supply chain, it is important to understand this kind of risk because it's going to determine the success of your supply chain activities. It is going to determine the success of your business. Then we have sudden shifts in market demand. There are various reasons on why customers will reduce their market demand. It may be, for example, increase in prices of those particular goods that you are selling. So they would shift. Shifting means they can go to what we call substitute goods. These are goods that will serve them the same purpose, and maybe they may be cheaper in the market. So definitely, what you're selling, the demand is going to go down because people have had a shift. People have moved to other similar goods, and you have to be cognizant of that. Even when you are in the supply chain activities within the organization, it is important for you to have a regular study of the market demand and what customers are asking for. We also have a change in customer preferences and behavior. We usually say around the marketing language, different customers have what we call market taste and preferences. So a customer who used to love a certain flavor of yogurt, maybe strawberry, maybe they have never used any other flavor, would maybe one day try the vanilla flavor and they find, oh, this is also very nice. And then, of course, they are going to shift. It might be even that particular yogurt is for another brand. So it means that brand that they were used to, they have already lost a customer. So customer preferences will always change. Behaviors. When we are talking about behaviors here, we are talking about customer behavior patterns, buying patterns. Remember, buying patterns would also be dictated by the levels of income. Those that have high income would be buying more items at a particular period compared to that person who has a less income. So those are the contributors of what we call demand and supply chain risks. Then we have other kinds of risks that we call the supply risks. And we are saying these are challenges that are going to arise from issues with suppliers and can disrupt the supply chain. So supply risks, what you need to know is that they are determined by, or they are contributed by people having disruptions within the supply chain, or also risks contributed by the suppliers themselves. And for example, we have supplier disruptions, e.g. bankruptcies and strikes. You could have very nice suppliers for your goods and services or for your business. Then they suffer what is called bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is when they are no longer being able to finance the business. So that means that would signify the end of their supply activities. It could also be strikes. Probably they are striking because we have economic issues like increase in fuel. We could be having issues like government policies that do not favor them, also around transport and so on and so forth. The other one is quality problems with supplied materials or products. So this is also a risk because you might be dealing with suppliers who are selling substandard goods. And that, remember, will trickle down to the customers that you're serving and will affect your business also. And also what we call capacity constraints and product delays from suppliers. Maybe their capacity to produce, maybe the demand is so high and they are not able to meet that demand. That's what we call capacity constraints and also production delays. Other forms of risks are what we call logistics and transportation risks. Of course, they are associated with the movement of goods. Remember, when we study marketing, we talk about very important P's. And the key focus that I want to focus on is the P on place, that focuses on the movement of goods from the producer to the consumer. So some of the issues that would contribute to logistics and transportation risks would be transportation delays due to weather or accidents. It could be, remember, we have various forms of transport. We have road transport, we have air transport, we have rail transport, we have water transport. So either of them could be able to suffer any form of delays. For example, for road transport, it could be contributed by things like traffic jams, carjacking along the road, Air transport also, we have had issues of strike, pilots going on strike because of a reason or the other. That is going to definitely cause transportation delays. We also have issues to do with weather, rainy seasons. Like now, we are having conversations around El Nino, and it is important to know what to be able to do around that particular season because of issues to do with weather. Accidents. These are vessels, of course, that are made by man, so it means they are prone to accidents, and you have to be aware that when these accidents occur, then it is going to be a major risk in relation to logistics and in transportation. And also we have fluctuating fuel prices. This is a phenomenon that it's now happening across the world. That means shipping costs are going to go up, and also what we call inefficient or unreliable logistic providers. You could be depending on logistic providers to move your goods, and they are unable to do it. So that becomes logistic and transportation risks. The other kind of risk that we may suffer along the supply chain operations are what we call the financial risks. They pertain to economic factors. For example, currency exchange rate fluctuations affecting the import and export costs. When you go to various countries in East Africa, for example, Kenya, we have issues of the dollar against the Kenyan shilling, and that means those that are in the import business are suffering because of these currency fluctuations. So different countries are experiencing this, of course, based on their strength of their shilling, and it would affect general import and export operations. We also have credit risks with partners or customers. Maybe you have had some credit engagements with your suppliers and you've been unable to pay them. So definitely they are going to not be able to supply goods. It could also be the suppliers themselves. They have defaulted in credit that they have undertaken, maybe in banks. And then, of course, that is going to affect you because they do not have the financial flows. And lastly, under the financial risks, risks associated with inflation impacting the cost of goods and services. So when we talk about inflation, we are referring to what we call general increase in prices of goods. And when prices of goods are increasing, on a supplier perspective, it simply means they are going to increase the prices on which they are delivering the goods to you. On a customer perspective, it means the cost of whatever items they are consuming is going to be high. So those are quite some very perfect examples for financial risks. The other one is on the regulatory and compliance risks. When you talk about regulatory and compliance risks, we are referring to risks that arise because of failure to meet legal and industrial standards. Every country has laws that govern how business is to be done. For example, if you are in the import business, you know that there are various taxes that you need to be able to pay. So when you do not pay those particular taxes, then it becomes a challenge for your business to be able to continue to run, or for those that are in the supply business to continue to execute their activities. So examples would be non-compliance penalties and legal repercussions. So failure to comply with various laws. So penalties are put on you. For example, when you do not pay taxes on time, then the taxation authorities will put penalties on you uh, in order to punish you, that you may not go that route next time. And of course, remember, those are finances that as a supplier you may need, or as a business you may need. We also have changing regulations impacting product requirements. Of course, with regular changes in governments across the world, you expect also regulations are going to change. Policies, taxation policies will be put in place. We could have regulations around quantity of goods that you may be imported. The government may also decide to impose some form of protectionism, where they will apply tools like quotas to limit on quantity. They can even do a total ban to the goods that you are supplying. They can also increase the tariffs and so on and so forth. So, and lastly is on the supply chain disruptions due to compliance issues. The other one is the natural and environmental risks. Of course, these kind of risks relate to the environment. For example, we could have natural disasters, earthquakes. We had a very dangerous earthquake very recently, 2023, just this year, in Turkey, and another one in Morocco. So those kind of natural disasters will affect supply chain activities, because suppliers' premises would be casualties of these earthquakes, hurricanes. We also have issues to do with climate change related disruptions. The world today is having a lot of conversations around climate change, conversations around emissions that are affecting the environment. So they could also affect suppliers in one way or another. We now are in conversations of the use of electric cars, electric motorbikes, everything electric. So what does that mean for those in businesses that are diesel powered, petrol powered? They might be out of business if they do not change to adapt to changes brought about by climate. And the other one is the environmental regulations impacting on operations. We also have what we call geopolitical risks. They result from political and international factors. For example, political instability in supplier countries. I'm sure you've heard about the war in Ukraine. It has really affected, especially those countries that depend from supplies from Ukraine. We also, around Africa, we also having issues around political instability in a number of countries. Most recently, in Sudan, in Gabon, we have had so many issues contributed by political instability. So it is something that we need to be keen and conversant on as suppliers, because it has a direct impact on our supply activities. We also have trade tensions affecting international supply chains. These trade tensions could be affecting countries, or could be contributed by countries that are having war amongst themselves. So those that are participating in the trade are going to be having a lot of trouble. And then we also have global conflicts impacting transportation routes. We also have technological risks. So these are risks associated with technology. For example, cybersecurity threats, data breaches, IT system failures disrupting operations. That is common also happening around the supply chain activities. We also have dependence on technology providers for critical services. Mitigating supply chain risks, identify and assess risks. The first step is to identify and assess all potential risks. So mitigating is how can we be able to deal with the risks that I have just listed there. So we need to do brainstorming sessions. We can be able to do risk assessments, supplier audits to ensure that we ensure that these risks do not take place. We also have develop mitigation strategies. Once the risks have been identified, businesses need to develop mitigation strategies. This can involve diversification. So you diversify the supplier base. That simply means you are not depending on one supplier to be able to supply to you goods and services. Then we can have disaster recovery plans, and then we can also invest in insurance. When you invest in insurance, then of course your supplies are protected and you are bound to be paid in case any of those risks takes place. Then we have monitor and review. So the supply chain risk management program should be regularly monitored. So you need to continually keep on checking what is happening and ensure that it is effective and up to date. We also have internal versus external supply chain risks. So supply chain risks can be divided into categories. We have what we call internal, we have external. Internal risks are those that are within the control of the business. And of course, external will be contributed by factors that are out of the control of the organization. Now, when we talk about internal risks, we are looking at things like poor quality control. Maybe within the organization, we are not able to do quality control. The other one is inefficient inventory management. The other one is labor disputes. Labor disputes are disputes related to employee issues. Maybe they are not feeling that they are well remunerated. We are going to get into trouble because of that. We also have issues to do with cyber attacks. And then also finally, we could be having technological failures. Examples of external risks. So these we have said are risks that are beyond our control as an organization. It could be natural disasters, it could be political instability, economic downtowns, it could be transportation delays, supplier failures. All those are risks that I'm sure that you can be able to relate with. About natural disasters, we have just mentioned them, and earthquakes in one of our previous slides. Political instability, that will depend on the nature of politics within that particular country. And it is very important to be able to note that. And also economic downtowns, challenges in economy, transportation delays, mitigating internal risks. So we have just seen internal risks in one of our previous slide. So how do we deal with that? Number one is investing in quality control procedures. The other one is implementing efficient inventory management system. The other one is to be able to maintain positive employee relations. So you need to create a very good relationship between yourself and the employees. This particularly is going to help mitigate issues of strike, and that is going to affect the supply chain activities. We need also to invest in cyber security, so we can have a way of protecting our systems from cyber attacks. I'm sure you've heard about things like installing of firewalls within our systems. We can also have a fully fledged department to ensure that we are always secured in terms of cyber security. And finally is having a plan for technological failures. We need to be asking ourselves a very, very important question. What is going to happen if technology fails? What is it that we are going to do? And then we have operational, financial, strategic, and reputational risks. Yeah, so operational risks, they are of course related to day-to-day operations of the business. And they can be contributed by a variety of factors: human errors, system failures, natural disasters, and so on and so forth. And then we have strategic risks. There are risks that can impact the long-term success of a business. They can be caused by customer preferences. If customer preferences change, then you might strategically find yourself not in the right place. Technological advancements, that means it's in relation to changes in technology, adopting of new ways of doing things, and also new competition. We also have, very importantly, other kinds of risks that we refer to as reputational risks. And they can damage the reputation of a business, and they can be caused by factors such as product recalls, data breaches, and environmental scandals. So when a product is recalled, there must be a reason. For example, it has not met the quality. um, Different countries have organizations that are keen on matters quality. And how do they do that? They keep on checking and testing whatever is being given in the market. For example, consumables. Those are items that people consume, to be able to find out whether they are fit for human consumption. And if they find that they are not fit for human consumption, they recall. They recall those particular goods. Data breaches. Uh, we could have people breach data. For example, organizations that use people's images and videos without their consent. That is part of data breaching. And also environmental scandals. Maybe you as a supplier or as an organization has been involved in matters contributing to the pollution of the environment. um, Examples of operational, financial, strategic, and reputational risks. So, operational risks, we have product delays. So, we could be having a delay in production. We also have what we call stockouts. Stockouts is when you are completely out of stock, or your stock, that is the main items that you depend on, are out of stock. It could be very, very important raw materials that are meant for you to be able to supply the goods. And then also we could be having missed deadlines. Maybe you have customer orders that you have not met and you need to do it. We could be having product recalls. We have just mentioned that, data breaches, natural disasters. We mentioned about earthquakes, floods. We are now having conversations around El Nino. It could cause a natural disaster, or a disaster around the transportation sector, or a disaster that is going to affect various suppliers. System failures, this could be also technological failures. And also, finally, on the human errors. Of course, these are errors caused by human beings within the supply chain. It could be an accident that could be avoided by a driver, for example. Maybe they were overtaking dangerously, or they were overtaking without following the requisite procedure in order to overtake. So that vehicle, maybe it was meant to do certain supplies, and it causes an accident. We have financial risks, changes in interest rates. Um, Interest rates, of course, are the rates that banks are using to be able to lend money. So we could be having the interest rate increasing. We also have currency fluctuations. I also mentioned about that. Changes of a currency in relation to that one of a particular country. We could also be having economic downturns, bad investments, issues to do with fraud, where we have loss of money. We also have issues to do with theft. So it could be theft of goods and services. And then we also have strategic risks, changes in customer preferences, technological advancements, new competition, regulatory changes, global economic instability. And in terms of reputational risks, product recalls, I've just explained. A recall is when maybe a good is called back into the supply chain or into the company because it has not met a certain threshold. Data breaches environmental scandals, social media scandals, executive misconduct. We could be having a misconduct among the management that has put our reputation as a supply entity or as an organization into risk. And finally, how do we manage these kind of risks? So the first thing, and very, very important, is to ensure that you identify them. So identify them in advance. And we have said one way of identifying is, of course, brainstorming. So you can be able to know in advance what is likely to happen once these risks takes place. And when you know the risk, most automatically you will now begin to prepare for it. And then also is assessing the risks. So once you have identified them, so you need to check the likelihood that they are going to happen. And also now, once you do that, you come up with mitigation strategies, or how are you going to prevent that risk from happening. And finally, ensure you do monitoring the risks. So we need a regular monitoring or regular checking of what is happening in order to ensure that that risk does not affect the supply chain. So that is going to bring us to the end of our discussion on various risks that the supply chain is faced with. And also we have seen how to be able to manage these risks in that they are not going to affect our supply chain activities. So I invite you on the different areas that we have discussed, that you may be able to also continually do research on them, find out more examples of reputational risks, strategic risks, in order to be able to broaden your mind on this particular area. Thank you.